I've never met more anxious or more depressed people than entrepreneurs. We don't talk about it. We pretend like we don't have it. We're drinking a lot to cover it. But I mean, this is a very mental health, everything, I think is really important.
The water's fine, homie, jump into the deep end. Sow it, you will reap it. We're talking how to start it, how to grow it, how to keep it. Take a deep breath. You are now rocking with Founder Secrets.
Right. Welcome, Mona.
Thank you.
First time I met Mona.
Mono.
She was Inc. 500 entrepreneur. She had this badass office downtown Manhattan. I was blown away. This is a previous business. So I thought we'd start with just what were the steps that got you to be an entrepreneur and start that business?
Oh my goodness. It was, I hate when women say it was luck and accidental, but I honestly think it was in this case. I have a background in user experience research. I have a particular way of doing that research. It basically is a conversation versus an interview. So I did that, and when I felt like that idea, that way of doing research wasn't blossoming the way I felt like it could, I just broke out on my own. And I literally tried to buy monapatel.com, but it was $30,000. So I was like, I'm not going to pay that. So I guess I'll take the two things that I know how to do really well, motivate people and design. And I created a company called Motivate Design with no business plan, no real desire to start a business. It was just, where do I put the money from freelancing? I did that in May of 2009. I was pregnant in August of 2009. And so that was another thing. I was like, okay, I don't want to go get a job yet. Let me just run this little freelancing business and we'll see what happens. And then after I have the baby, then I'll think about a job. And we got so much work that first year. It was a ton of research projects because we're coming out of the recession and people wanted to know how did customer behavior change. And again, that kind of research that we were doing where people would reveal what they're not spending money on anymore. Or we did a lot of work in pharma and depression. And so this method really blew up this company, and it just kind of kept growing. And I did not want to spend full time working because I had the baby, or I was pregnant and I was having the baby. And so I just started hiring really smart, operationally minded people, which is not me. And so they would structure the company and bring in the right talent, the right researchers, the right designers. And I really just focused on talking about the way we did research, and it ballooned. And I think I did meet you right around the Inc. 5000 time. If you looked on paper, you would see a lot of success. I think those were the worst years, though, for me, because I just had this company, and I had payroll with that company, and I loved the people that I worked with. And so I felt very tied to the company, not very free. And so it took me a couple years to realize that, to come to terms with that, to bring in the right business partner, to take it off my hands. And that really has been, from 2015 till January of this year, the journey. So I have a very love-hate relationship with building companies. I think creating and coming up with ideas and all of that I love, but the building of the company, I'm glad I proved that I could do it, but I don't think I'm doing it again anytime soon. That mountain has been climbed.
What got you to start the mountain in the first place? You were working for a big company?
I was working for a small agency, great people. I wanted to do research the way I wanted to do it. It's something I'm very passionate about, understanding people and getting them to open up. And so I felt like I knew how to do that, and I wasn't given enough room to really take that to the level that I knew we could take it. And so it was more that. It was the love of the craft that drove me versus any kind of potential scale.
What is the difference between an interview and a question?
Yeah, okay. You ask questions in an interview. In an interview, you have an agenda, right? So you're looking to get something out of them, and you're listening from your perspective. What can I learn? What can I get out? Basically those things. A question is for the other person. A conversation is for the other person. What can they learn? How can they open up? What kind of healing could they have from a question that just gets them to think differently?
What's an example you've done successfully? That you can think of how this new method you're talking about that you did.
So an interview might be, tell me, do you think you're a good listener? And what are some examples of when you know how to listen, you don't want to hear? And so see how the second one gets you to reflect on a fear or a doubt or a worry that you might have. It's a gift to you. The first one is like, tell me.
Yeah, it felt like I was already being judged for that. Probably not a good listener.
Right. Yeah, mostly. A lot of interview questions come from judging, knowing, and wanting to elicit a reaction, a reply.
How do you build the trust to allow them to where they'll actually answer the second question?
Yeah, trust is one of those things. I just actually got verbal on a project today to study trust, to study in business, how do you know who to trust? And what have you used as those markers? So I could probably answer that question much better than I'm going to right now in like a month or 2 months. But where does trust come from? Like you think about, number one, first thing I think about is how much does this person remind me of someone I've met in the past? Because I'm going to use a pattern, right? I don't know you. So the only thing I can do is say, this is a man. Do I trust him or not? This is a man of a specific color. This is a man who speaks a certain way, has a stature. That gives me my first filter of trust. Then it's what you say. And so have you spent the time to build trust? And then the third would be the questions that you ask and the agenda that I perceive in it. So people can perceive when you're trying to get something out of them, right? And people can also perceive when you're trying to help them. And so the trust comes from your intention and subconscious and conscious, but also the words you use and the space in between the words, how much smiling you have, all of that rapport building will change how open people are and how trustworthy you'll come off. But I'm sure there's more. We'll do research and we'll figure it out.
I remember one time somebody came up to me saying, hey, have you read this really good book called Reframe? And I was like, give me the Amazon link. And it turns out it's Mona's book. I'm curious, how did that come about? It seems like it blew up pretty quickly. And how did you write that?
Yeah, it's really funny. You'll notice a theme in everything I say, which is a lot of passion will start my drive, and then I'll like push it to a certain level. I remember I went to a client meeting. It's a very large trading company. And we had done this big round of research. And it showed that people were not going to use this new tool that they had designed in the way that they hoped. And they didn't want to hear it. And I kept wondering, like, why don't they want to take the data that we're giving them? Like, the research is showing this is not going to work. And what I found is that when people see problems as problems, they're not in that innovation space that we were trying to pull people in with design thinking. When they see them as challenges and then challenges as opportunities, they're much more willing to open up to new ideas, like explore the tension and all of that. So the book started on a rant. I turned on my phone, opened the voice memo, and just went off about why people can't innovate. And then I was like, I should write an article. So I got it transcribed. And then I read that, and I was like, oh, I could say so much more about this. And that was the beginning. I couldn't stop writing about this. And I had done a lot of nonprofit work at that time. I still do, but I wanted to take the stuff that we were charging $100,000 for and make it accessible. So I put everything that we put in our $100,000 workshops in that book, and still there. However, this year I have learned something that is blowing my mind. One of my business partners on the Gray Zone side taught me this thing called pre-framing. So she has a saying that an ounce of pre-framing is like a pound of reframing. So reframe, you're in the situation, and now you're trying to see it better. You're like, okay, I have a problem. I don't like this problem. Let me try to see it as an opportunity. A pre-frame is how you approach the world in the first place. So, for example, in a conflict, you're having a conflict with a business partner or a personal partner, you are trying to take what they say and spin it in a way that makes sense. That's reframing. Pre-framing is, I am so curious about what this person has experienced in their life. I don't have an opinion. I don't have a judgment. I'm just here to learn. I'm just here to figure out how I can be a better partner to this person. That's how I approach the world. That's how I approach my partnership. Then you don't need to reframe. Reframing is kind of like a stopgap Band-Aid, I'm realizing. And this is like the health, so that you don't even have to have that reframe later. It's how do you view that relationship? How do you view your role in that relationship? What is your mindset when you go to that relationship? If you are talking to a business partner or a personal partner, and every time you're having your filters, your pre-framed filters be humility, curiosity, non-judgment, openness, love, and every time you have a conversation, you're like, this is just who I am. This is just how I operate. You're never going to have a conflict at that point. You're not. If it's always like, yeah, tell me more, or you don't like something, okay, I'm not going to take it personally. I'm just curious again. If you view the world from that lens, you don't have to reframe. I know, it's blowing my mind. I'm like, so I've been trying to do it. I'm like, I'm a kind person. I'm a curious person. I'm a non-judgmental person. That one's really hard when you're in like Times Square, but like I'm still working on that one.
Sorry, we made you come up.
I had a little zinger ready for you all. But yeah, if you approach every conversation knowing how you're going to show up, then there's nothing to fix later. That kind of gets to the trust as well.
Love it.
Especially in called trust, and you said that you have now put other people in place to run the business.
Yes.
How do you trust that those people aren't going to blow it up, steal it, and probably maybe more importantly, just ruin your reputation because so much was tied to your name in that business?
So for Motivate Design, I have honestly the best business partner on the planet. And I really believe I manifested him, so we can talk about that too. It started because he worked with a set of gentlemen who were buying up agencies. And so multiple people sent me a note saying, these guys are buying up agencies, you should talk to them. I met with Peter. I loved Peter. I was like, wow, this guy has so much insight about the business. He asked questions in an open way. He never cut me off. He still never cuts me off. The way he approaches conversation, super respectful. So that helped with the trust. And I felt really good about this. I was like, okay, I hate this business anyway, so this will be great. I'll just sell it and they'll take it over. I went to go meet his partner and I hated this dude. Like as soon as I sat down, he said, well, I see why you're so good at sales. And I was like, ugh. And he was like leaning back with his stupid glass of wine. And I was like, I hate this guy. I think it was the first time I left a meeting without finishing my wine as well. I was over it. I was like, no. And so I left in the middle, possibly dramatic, makes sense and on brand.
Talk a little more about that, because you meet a lot of people,
Yeah.
and I'm wondering, how did you, and you seem like you've chosen people that worked out, so I'm wondering, what was the filter besides their physical appearance being
I mean, his
douchey?
vibe, it's a vibe. Yeah, it's like literally vibration and vibe. Like you could tell this guy wanted to take advantage of my business and me. He was looking at it from a numbers perspective and also trying to suss out, who am I? What is my role in the company? Would he want to work with me? He was looking, like again, back to that interview versus question. I could tell he was looking to take from me.
But how did you develop that ability? Because all of us would like to have that superpower, but how can you tell one person from another?
Such a great question. Let's think of examples, because maybe if I think of an example, I can back into this.
Or maybe when's the first time that you noticed that you had these strong beliefs about this person versus that person and started helping you?
Yeah, okay. So the first answer I have is I think it's my background in research. I know how to listen. You can say the craziest shit and I can listen. And most people can't do that. Most people think, I got to respond to what this person is saying. So if you know how to listen, then you can read what this person's vibe is. Like they choose certain words, they have certain mannerisms, they have certain like either condescending or not condescending way of approaching this conversation. And if you listen and you don't make it about you, then the question can confirm what you think. I rarely just have an opinion. I asked him a couple of questions, and then he verified that he was a jerk. And I was like, yeah, this is definitely not going anywhere. But I got the data after. So it's get the signal, validate the signal, all while not being triggered yourself.
What are some tips on how to listen better?
So there's like, if you think of it this way, there's 3 levels of listening. Level 1 is I'm listening just to figure out what I'm going to do with that data. So a great example that's healthy is I'm watching the news and I see that it's going to rain on my house. Right? So now I know I need to take an umbrella. That was a great level 1 listening. But we also listen to all the conversations that we have, usually from our perspective. What does this mean for me? How do I get something from it? In fact, everyone listening to this is probably thinking like, how do I use what this person is saying? So that's how you're approaching it. Level 2 is how do I help this other person? Coaches, trainers, therapists, all excellent at level 2, where you don't know anything about their life. They're here to help you unpack your life. They ask you questions. They point out a discrepancy. They ask you what you think about this idea. We've all been mentored and coached and very well. And so that's like level 2. Level 3 is where you're not you or them. You're just watching the conversation as an observer. So think of an example of when you have a conflict with someone and the 2 people are just like crossed arms, not speaking to one another. You're one of them, so you can't see that when you're in level 1. And you're definitely not going to help them So you're not in level 2. So if you can jump into this level 3 where you're like, why is Flaviu instigating this with Taylor? Like, you can see it. You can see that he's not asking questions or opening up. If it's you, it's hard to see. But if you can remove it and say, why is this situation happening right now again? Why is this person feeling like I'm saying this thing again? Then you can listen from a different angle. You can listen from kind of a healing angle. If you're spiritual, you can think of it more like, what would God see in this conversation? Like, not taking sides. If you're not spiritual, what would a security camera see?
That's a good one.
like it doesn't matter. Like, but there's nonverbal, and there's usually you start to see how this person and this person are just making everything worse versus better. There's also 4 signs, I think, that when you know you're not listening. Like, when you're disengaged, all of us have been on our phone pretending like we're listening. Like, imagine being the person who's trying to tell you something. That doesn't feel good. When you are judging, like, you know what's right and that person's right or wrong. No one likes to talk to people who are deciding whether they're right or wrong. Whether you're knowing. The third is knowing. So you already know what they're going to say. You already know what they meant. You already know what they don't even know they meant. All of that. And then the 4th is, so it's judging, knowing, disengaging, and reacting. You're just listening to reply. You're thinking about what you're going to say. This person said like X, Y, and Z. You're like, oh, I have an example that actually counters that. I'm going to bring that up. And so you're not listening.
Are you saying that those are 4 bad ways?
4 signs that you're not listening.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, and people think they listen. And you can't improve your listening if you think you're a great listener. This is like my biggest problem. I ask them, like, what percentage of the time do you think you listen? People are like 80%, 90%. I'm like, bullshit. You do not listen 80 or 90% of the time actively, mindfully, consciously. You don't. No one does. It's actually, research shows it's closer to like 25% of the time. So 75% of the time you are not listening. And you're missing all of that data, all of that strategy that could come your way. And in fact, we don't listen to people we don't agree with. We don't listen to people who have different beliefs than us. We cannot listen to people who have different values than us these days. And so where do you get your diversity of thought? If you're just going to hang out with people who think like you, believe like you, where are you going to learn anything? Now, but you're not learning. You can't learn.
Is there one tip that you'd recommend for somebody to allow them to become a better listener and get these divergence or diverse thoughts?
I mean, of course, I'm going to say shut up, right? Just like be quiet. Be quiet. Let people empty. And in fact, the more dissimilar you are from them, the more they need to empty. That's where you can understand why somebody has a belief that they have, why they, especially if it's hate or if it's anger. These are emotions that we're so scared of. And of course, if you're going to get triggered by somebody, then this is not the time for you to be trying to help anyone else. But if you are in a place where you're centered and somebody else is angry, can you be a vessel for that to empty? Because if they empty, they're not charged by it anymore. And then if you are looking to influence people, which I always am, if you're looking to influence people, then that would be the opportunity. After they empty, after all of their points for why they believe what they believe, then you can open up with questions. Again, not with an agenda, but to help them. Like, do you think if you grew up in a different family, you would think something differently? Do you believe the same thing as your siblings? Do you think this comes from your parents? Where do you think the belief comes in from there? Does this feeling leave you feeling good about yourself? You can ask these kinds of beautiful opening questions after people empty. But if you're arguing, that's not working. So if you're arguing, you're not listening. Step 1 would be stop arguing. Just be quiet. Just be quiet.
I love it.
All right. I know Taylor has some questions about the new business.
Oh. It's so scary to start new businesses, even if you've done them
Here
before,
we go.
right? It's so scary.
I guess the first question is, what inspired you to want to follow this journey? And to your point, it's hard to do something new,
Oh my
even after
God.
you've done it several times.
It is.
So why now? Why?
And maybe
what
it's even
encouraged-
harder because like people expect you to know what you're doing. You don't. So Gray Zones started because I did some research on why women don't report harassment in the workplace. And I remember presenting it and people would get uncomfortable but not really listen. And so I thought about, what if I create a scenario where you get to feel what it feels like? The answer is that some women don't know if harassment happened or not. And so that was the gray zone. That's where, like, when somebody has grabbed something, but what about when they say something? What about when they imply something? What if they make you uncomfortable? Or what if they, like, stare at you a little too long? Like, what about these scenarios? And they didn't report it because they weren't sure. And so I created a play that you watch, and I ask you to vote on whether you think harassment's happening or not. And about 80% say yes. And I think about 600 people did this play. So 80% say yes. Then same words, same actors, same format, different tone of voice. And you watch the play again, and 40% say it's harassment. And then we hosted a conversation about it. And it was same exact words, exact same words, just the intonation. That's the only thing we changed. And it was really powerful for both people who have had harassment happen to them and people who have harassed and didn't realize that was harassment. It was like one of the most healing and powerful things, and that's what I was looking for. You know, for me personally, I was like, I need to do something that matters. Like I wasn't prior to that. And so we did the gray zones. About 4 or 5 sessions in, George Floyd is murdered. So people are showing up, like 30 or 40 people are showing up to the sessions, but they don't want to talk about sexual harassment. They want to talk about racism. So within a week, we spun up another experience where you just listen to a set of voicemails and you tell me if you think there's a microaggression, right? And that was, again, powerful for people because they didn't know what that word meant and they were too embarrassed to say I didn't know what that word meant. So a big part of the Gray Zone's mission started to become clear to me where it's, I don't want to teach you anything because like you're not going to learn if you don't want to learn. But I can put you in a situation where the environment, the words, the actors, the story provides you with a mirror where you can see your bias. And you can see how you misinterpreted something or assumed something or judged something, and then you can decide whether that serves you or not. All of that is your decision. And that is, I think, how people learn. That's how, at least with my punk-ass kids, that's how it works for them. So now I'm just doing it for adults. They don't like to be told what to do, but they like experiments where they can test out and learn for themselves. So that work led me into kind of more DE&I, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So Gray Zones got funded essentially from doing DE&I custom vignettes that were used in training. And I did that for a bit. It was really nice to have money come in. And I used the money to learn how to write and learn good storytelling, go to a bunch of conferences, hire a bunch of mentors. Because I was like, I don't know anything about this space, but it's really fun. And so now I'm at the point where I've taken all those classes and I'm thinking about what do I want to teach. And we just started this month doing some workshops on listening and how teams can listen better. And it's close. It's what I know. So I'm like, okay, I could do this. This is like moderately fulfilling. But I want to push fulfilling to like max fulfilling. And me, when the content is good and I'm fulfilled and I know I'm making an impact, the money comes. When I do things for money, it almost always turns into a dumpster fire. Like, almost always. And so eventually. And so I'm really thinking about what gives me as much joy as possible to create and do, what impact can I have on people, what feels really easy, and then the abundance. The abundance has to be there too because I like nice shoes and I like all the nice things. And so I want it. And I want it. And so this is a new idea, but the one on the table right now is to create live immersive experiences for entrepreneurs and their partners. Partners can be your life partner, it can be your business partner, it can even be your son and daughter. And so it's a 2-person experience. You come in, depending on where we are, the first one will likely be a yoga studio. We present you with exercises that will teach you to talk more deeply with the person you brought. But while you're sitting there, there are 2 actors who are also in the circle with you. And the 2 actors will be sharing their story. And so that's my prescribed way to make sure I know what's going to happen in this experience. But as when you're in forum even, when people open up to a level of vulnerability, the whole room opens up, vulnerability. So I'm having the actors there to go deep very quickly into a topic. The first one I think we're going to launch is about desire. Like, how do you know when a desire is good for you and when it's toxic? You know, we all, especially entrepreneurs, we love to get. We have a lot of wants, we have a lot of needs, we have a lot of cravings, very hungry. So some of that stuff is great. That's where our drive comes from. And some of it is so toxic because we're spinning and we're trying to heal a wound from something external. So how do you know which one your desire is? That's the topic. And that feels very meaningful because, again, we have all been in this space. I've never met more anxious or more depressed people than entrepreneurs. We don't talk about it. We pretend like we don't have it. We're drinking a lot to like cover it. But I mean, this is a very mental health, mental everything. I think is really important. And so my fulfillment is going up, the creativity of how this story comes together and creating an experience for a date night that I think would be spectacular for entrepreneurs to bring their partners into their world so they can feel what it feels like with all this pressure. All of that is starting to feel really good. So I say all this in this like video cast, but who knows if I'm even going to do it. I think I am, but like this is the plan. This is the plan, as the saying with fans.
There's definitely a theme where you say that you like influencing people. And,
I do.
And making an impact, it sounds like has to do with people changing in some way.
Yes.
Which you admitted it has to be done on their own.
Yes.
I'm wondering, how do you measure the impact? How do you know they've actually changed?
Yeah. So I have been spending about 4 hours on this today. Like this is literally the question I was asking myself. It's really hard to convince people to change because change requires discomfort, and people don't like to be they don't like to be uncomfortable. And if their ego or their brain is in charge, then the only role that the brain has is to keep you doing what you do always and not going outside of your patterning. Change is it's not something I want to say I sell. What people want are closer relationships. And so instead of trying to change you or change you, I focus on the space between you. And how can I change the space so that it has better energy? So that you're being more honest and he's being more honest. There's like more lightness, more funniness. Like even if we're talking about something that is pretty hard to talk about, I trust you to have my back, you trust me to have your back. All of those things create a better environment between people. And that you can measure because you'll have better communication, you'll be happier. And even if I could never put a number on it, you'll come back because of the feeling. A lot of my work doesn't have an ROI. I'm like teaching people how to be better humans. It's like, how do you measure that? I don't know. Don't be a dick. How do you measure it?
It's really interesting. I think others might say, just send a survey after, and if they say, I'm very satisfied, then that's, what are your thoughts on that?
I can get anybody to say anything you want on a survey. And I really, I put that challenge out there. Surveys are words organized in a particular way, in a particular order, given to a particular set of people. So if you want to hear your product is great, I can write one survey. If you want to hear your product is not great, I can write another survey. And both of them will tell you exactly what I'm going to tell you, they tell you. That's it's survey design.
What about these polls, political polls that people are like, oh my God, is this person going to win or not? Do you think those are all bullshit?
Didn't they prove to be bullshit?
People Nate Silver. Is Nate Silver a fraud?
People are the worst predictors of their future behavior. So if you say, who are you going to vote for? Or do you like this product? Would you use this product? They're not good at telling you what they will do. They're actually more accurate at telling you what other people would do. So if you're going to ask a question, ask that. Say, do you think your mom would use this? That would be it. Correlation-wise, that is more accuracy than would you use this? Because you use things based on emotions and needs, and you don't know what those are. They're driving you, but you don't know what they are.
So how should people measure, if you want to measure the happiness of your team or the success of a product, what do you recommend?
This is a really good tie back to the interview versus the question thing, right? You want something. You want to know the data. You want to know the answer. People know that you want to know that question. What do employees think you care about? How long I'm going to stay, whether I'm working, and whether you can get the most out of me, right? They know this. And so before we write the survey, I want to fix that mindset. It's what do you want to learn? Where's your humility and your curiosity, really? And then if I can get that, then I can write a stellar survey for you or run a stellar focus group for you to get you that answer. But if you're really looking for can I not give you a raise this year? And what is the likelihood of you leaving? Then they know that too. And they answer with the same amount of effort that you gave for their feelings. Yeah, 5.
So what do you think Net Promoter Score or employee Net Promoter Score is trending nowadays?
So again, it works, right? People do use that metric and people like the simplicity of the metric. What are we looking for? How much more will you do for me? Right? Inherent in would you recommend this or would you use it again is you like me, right? Am I going to make more money off of
10,
you?
Right?
Right, 10, right? Am I going to make more money off of this situation? Should I invest in this relationship or not? They know. This is that trust question again. They know whether they can tell you that or not. Their subconscious has registered that this is what you're doing. So again, nothing wrong If that's what you want to get, then ask the question, do you like me? Would you give me more money? That's what we're asking. You can ask it in fancy friend words. But if you really want to know, what should I do next? What needs are you not, what needs are not being met? That's observation. That's actually not even asking. That's when you follow people around for a day, you know, the exact target audience that you want, and it's ethnography. You're following them and looking for what they say and what they do and how they feel. You're looking for any incongruence. Those tension points is where innovation comes from. All the best ideas come from there. Because if people knew what their problem was, they'd be trying to solve it or finding another solution for it. It's the ones they don't know they have. The most famous examples when we did ethnography is like we would go and watch a trader do some trades, and they would have Post-it notes all over their computer reminding them of passwords and reminding them what to do, and like this little ink, don't forget this button. And so you can see where the UI was breaking. You could see where there are opportunities. They can't tell you. If you ask them, they're like, it's fine.
Right.
The NASA example that I often use, my first project was in NASA. And the scientist who, like, granted I was wearing like a purple suit, so like maybe they didn't take me seriously for that, but they think of research differently. Like a NASA scientist has very different rules on what research is than a qualitative researcher who follows you around for a day and gets ideas. And so when I was there doing the research, they did not think they had a problem at all. But I saw where the inefficiency was. You know, how they had to take a piece of paper and walk across the room and then come back, or how 4 people would cluster around one computer and then not be able to see anything. So you look for things like that, and that gives you the real answer for, is this product working? Are people happy with it? And where are my opportunities for improvement?
So I want to go back to something you said a second ago. You said create this space. You can't. So Flaviu and I are in a negotiation.
Okay,
let's
great.
Say, right? Or I'm trying to sell Flaviu on something. You said I can't change Flaviu and I can't change myself, maybe, but the space in between us.
You can change yourself.
I can change myself. Okay.
You can't
so I
change
can change
Flaviu.
myself.
Yeah.
I can't change Flaviu.
Yes.
But I'm trying to sell Flaviu on something,
Yes.
right? I guess what I heard in my head, or what I've been thinking, is that can I change the physical space? So in other words, do I have a better chance of selling Flaviu on some deal if we are in one scenario, maybe we're meeting at a restaurant, or what kind of restaurant? Lit restaurant, a dark restaurant, one that serves drinks, one that's a coffee shop. Is that
what I meant
physical
by space?
environment with the space? Is that
No,
what
I meant
got
the
it completely
energy.
wrong.
Yeah, no, it's good though, because it actually sparked an idea. It's an energetic space, right? It is. So you want to sell Flaviu on something. Does Flaviu feel like being sold? Probably not. Does anybody like being sold? No. So how do we get him to want to buy? And so that's the space that we currently have, right? To you is sold. That's it. He's in and he's like, I also want to tell 4 of my friends. Where he is right now is judging. He's curious. He's wondering what kind of value you have. He wants to know more about your product. There's a lot of like things happening here. So trust is one way to get him to move closer. Laughter is another way. Reducing the formality, which is where that restaurant and lighting and all of that can come in. We're having a drink, right? Getting to the place where he is more comfortable telling us what he's looking for. What pain point are we solving? Why is this pain point relevant? And then what has he tried? All of that is how you close that space of sales, right? So that at this point then he's asking, but what do you guys do again? And that's when you're ready to share and sell. Right, but I think what I've seen a lot of salespeople or people in the space of getting people to buy their thing is they go hard for, let me tell you about my product. Don't have enough information of why that product might help or service would help and what the real pain point is. Maybe there's 8 other products that you could have sold. Maybe this person is actually the innovation or has a need that's the innovation for your next product. But we miss all of that when we're not listening and when we're not focusing on how do I bring this person energetically, trust-wise, closer to me so that the sale just happens. Yeah.
Love it.
Wow. Okay. Oh, you talked about putting people in a mindset of learning. We talked about the physical space. How do you put yourself in the mindset of learning for your own, the things you want to learn? How do you get there?
How do I get to, I guess it's a value of mine, having grown up with immigrant parents. Like they just instilled learning no matter what. I remember when I was 16, all my friends were getting jobs. And so I was like, I want to go work at Foot Locker or whatever it was. And my dad's like, I'll pay you to read a book. He's like, how much is Foot Locker going to pay you? I was like, $8 or whatever it was. And he's like, I'll pay you $9 an hour to read books. And I was like, okay, that's a better deal. Yeah. I mean, they were that kind of on top of like, just learn. Like, you don't need to go do that right now. Learn. So that's one thing. I think I just value it. The other is maybe it's like almost FOMO. I want to know what, like, I don't want to be in a conversation and not know. That doesn't feel good. Or not want to learn if I don't know. It doesn't align with I guess it doesn't align with what I think the point of life is. Like, why else are we here? Why are we sitting here talking? I'm learning, you're learning. Isn't that the only metric that we're going to walk away with on this? Like, was this fun? Did I learn?
I'm also wondering, tactically, one time you recommended to me morning pages, and I'm wondering what kinds of things do you do on a regular sort of basis that do spark that creativity?
Yeah. Meditation is a big one this year, and we can talk about that because I think maybe the way I do it is a little different. I think meditation almost always increases my thirst for learning and growing. What else do I do? I mean, I do read a lot. I always have a book on my phone or an audiobook or something so that any downtime in between meetings, like you came in, I was already reading and checking stuff out. So I use like the 5 minutes in between to do that because I sometimes don't have time. And then I use conversations. I think that's like the thing I use all the time. There's always something to learn from anyone you're talking to. And so those would probably be the top 3.
If you take a person and you want to make them more creative, what would you do to them? What would you tell them to do?
Stop living in fear. You're naturally creative. You're naturally creative. Humans are creative. It's actually like one of the biggest differences between us and robots. Why aren't they? What are they afraid of? Are they afraid of being judged? Are they afraid of getting it wrong? There's no such thing. Are they not confident enough? Do they not have enough love for themselves to even try? Like, that's what I'm more interested in. Because if you can clear that, creativity is like, I mean, you can sing a song, you can write a book, like you can do anything. So it's not, a lot of times behavior change isn't doing more of something, it's removing the barrier so that you can naturally just do the thing. Like, people want to be creative, people want to love, people want to forgive, people want to connect. These are things we want to do. And rather than like trying to convince you to do them, I'm really curious about why wouldn't you do something extra nice for your partner today? You want to, deep down you want to, but then there's a barrier that prevents you from doing it. And so if you focus on that and you remove that, then you're fixing a fundamental belief and your behavior changes as a result. We focus so much on behavior change and then we like talk about habits and then we're like atomic habiting. Like, I don't know what's happening over here. Just like think about under a belief is what? It's like a value that I think I have that you don't have. But then under those values are the shared values. Like, I want to love, I want to be loved, I want to be seen, you want to be seen. I want you to trust me, I want to trust you. Like, under all of it is that. And so then you're just looking for what is your drama from that? Like, why can't you be there?
How do you meditate? You said you meditate in a fun way.
I think so. I mean, so clearing my mind did not work. I tried that for like 10 years. My thoughts come in hot. There's like a lot of them, and they're colorful, and they move, and like it's a lot. So now I am trying to catch them. I think it's insight meditation is probably the closest to what I do. So when I sit down, and sometimes I'm not sitting down, I'm just like on the subway or doing it with my eyes open, I'm curious about what thought is coming in, and knowing that it's my mind that's giving me my thought, I don't associate from it. I'm just kind of curious about it. I'm like, where did that thing come from? So if a thought is, I wonder if Jaden is still mad at me from a fight we had on Tuesday. Jaden's my older son. Then, like, I get it. And rather than, like, following the rabbit hole of, like, how it felt to get into a fight with my son and, like, oh, I wish I'd done this differently and I wish I'd done that differently, I just catch it. And this is my meditation. I'm catching the thought and I'm like, ooh, that's a fear. That's interesting. That's doubt. Okay, what else is it? So I'm analyzing the thought. And so my brain gets really confused because it's like, wait, I'm giving you a thought. Now you're using me to analyze the thought. And that's how I get it to stop. I like confuse it. And so it's like, I don't know, I'm like short circuiting. And then when I can stop that, then I focus on essentially like a swirling energy that has more intelligence than my mind. And that swirling energy is my intuition, it's my energy, it's how I show up in the world. And I like just focus on that. Now that my brain is confused and like short-circuited, then I can just focus on the swirling energy. And I charge up. Like, I think of it like a Tesla charge. I charge up. And so then when I go out in the world, it's just a more vibrant place for me to operate from. Then it's easier to listen. It's easier when some dumb person says some dumb thing. You're like, wow, man, you should charge up. Like, another person is like, I don't know, I'm not creative. You can look at them with compassion and be like, yeah, no, I've been there, and we all are, and all of that. So you just have a different energy source that is, it's psychic. a bit. I feel like I know who not to spend time with and who to spend time with, who needs my help, and when I'm not ready to help them. Like, a lot of information comes in when I'm charged or at full battery, and then I've noticed that I'm not as fun when I'm not. I'm a little edgier, and I don't actually care about what you think, and I'm taking everything personally, and everything is stressful, and I find that's just my empty battery. And so the meditation helps me be a better version of myself. Like, clearing my thoughts and like just kind of zenning out did not work for me. I love that it works for other people. It just doesn't work for me. I don't want clear thoughts. I want a charged body. And so that's how I do it.
All right, let's talk about psychedelics.
Okay. I love that.
What are the benefits, do you think, to psychedelics
for me? So I started microdosing maybe 5 or 6 years ago. A really good friend of mine did it, and she was like, oh my gosh, I'm so much more creative and chill. And I was like, I want to be creative and chill. So that was the sale. Short energy, short sales process. Yeah, I was like, that sounds like amazing. And so she hooked me up with, and I wish that it was like more available and you could check the quality, but like I took a jump and I took the stuff that she had gotten. And it was this whole protocol of psilocybin, lion's mane, and niacin. No flush niacin for me because it like made my face. And the three really did a beautiful job. I mean, the best way, she was absolutely right. It just kind of opens you up so that your thoughts are clearer, the creativity is juicier, you get more excited about ideas, you feel more love, and you're like, what is happening? Like, this is amazing. Before that, though, I would be knocked out. So I would take the microdosed mushrooms and have to go to sleep. And so I called the shaman who sent them, and I was like, what is happening? He's like, maybe you need to slow down. And he was absolutely right. I was doing too many things, and I was trying to push every boulder up the hill and prove all kinds of stuff with my business. I was unhappy at home. Like, it was just, all of it was true. And so it first just shut me down. I was like just sleeping. And then this like beautiful opening happened, and someone would say something, and I like felt it in my heart. And I'm like, whoa, what was that? And so that kind of got me curious about what a journey would be. I would not recommend what I did, which is go to ayahuasca instead of psilocybin. Psilocybin, I think, is a kinder medicine than ayahuasca.
You went straight to the MBA.
I did. I went straight to an MBA, and it was, my brain is a powerful machine. It is. I love it, but it sometimes thinks it's in control. And so ayahuasca helped me see that in a very clear way. I don't think anything else could have. I don't think, and so people even listening, if this doesn't make sense, this is kind of why it's like, this psychedelics is meant to help you see that your brain, your ego, when it's in charge, makes you miserable. But if it's running the show, then how do we tell you that? How do I tell you that you're only seeing in 2D because that's all you know, and there's 4D available? And it's very hard to explain what happens unless you go through it. But what happened to me is that, I mean, it really was a beautiful story. I actually heard two voices. I heard my ego and everything that I'm used to hearing. And then I heard a goddess. And this goddess was so smart and so savvy. And my entire ayahuasca journey was my goddess and my ego having a podcast, like a conversation. It was 6 hours, 3 times. And they debated every decision that I had to make. And this one was so much smarter. And this one was kind of an idiot and very annoying.
The goddess was smarter.
My goddess was incredible. And in full vulnerability and transparency, we did that. I came home. I thought I had schizophrenia because I could hear two voices. And I was like, oh, gosh, what did I do to my brain? What did I do? This is not good. And then I called Tim, who ran that program, and I told him, I was like, I am very concerned that I have done something permanent. And he said, framing is so important, which is so fun when people tell you to reframe, and you wrote a book called Reframe. You're like,
that's
okay.
my book tagline.
Okay, buddy. And he was
you should reframe your words.
Exactly. And so he was like, it seems like you're talking to God. That seems like a good thing. Like, so think about your words and think about what you want to get out of this experience, because it's already happening. And that's it's an important lesson, and I think something that psilocybin has taught me in general, that pain will happen. You are not going to have a great day every day. How you react to pain is the game. Like, that's the game. How much you can stay centered, regardless of what anybody's saying, what anybody's doing, what's coming at you. The more you can stay centered, man, that charge gets like stronger and stronger. Then you're like, I'm unstoppable. I'm actually unstoppable. I can do anything. And so that's what I learned. So I had the goddess talking to me, and she's like, you sure you want to do that? Or are we going to keep doing this? I still hear laughter sometimes when I say something, and she's like, oh, we still think that? I'm like, ah. But over the last couple of years, this is where it gets really fun. I became her. Obviously, where else would that voice come from? I didn't create it from anywhere. It's obviously my brain. So I had to find where that voice was coming. She is so smart, right? So finding where she was and then realizing like, okay, we're not separate. There's no two voices in my head. It's always Mona. And there's a way to think about this that's more conscious, and there's a way to think about it that is more protective and fear-based. And I'm tired of this. It's incredibly tiring to always worry and have doubt and wonder and feel like everything is going to crash around you. It's so much easier to live life just knowing that I'm going to die. So between now and that point, let me just follow the signs. Like, I don't have to think. I don't need to worry. I don't need to second guess, overthink, all the things. Let me just go in the direction of ease, impact, fulfillment, and abundance and see what happens. And just not overthinking has saved me millions of hours.
I find the creative process very painful. So I'm wondering whether
what part
is
of it?
Pain not part of the process?
What part is painful?
Well, coming up with something new and then saying in this particular show, and maybe people don't like it, and certainly it's a room for improvement. But at first, is pain not part of
No, not in that way.
creativity?
Because that's not creativity. Creators create because there's no other choice. Like you're just doing it. The outcome doesn't matter. But if you start now wondering what the audience is going to care about and what they think, and if they like it, then I did a good job, and if they don't like it, I didn't do a good job. When they're dumb, they don't know anything, right? Or you start thinking about, like, this is hard. It's not hard, but unless you apply a filter that it needs to be something. Like, it's not hard to draw. It's not hard to sing. It's not hard to dance. But then when it has to be a certain way, then it gets hard. So part of creativity is not believing that second part, just creating. And creating because it brings you fulfillment and joy. You all are doing this right now, and it's addictive how much joy you have doing this. Just creating. This is what you're good at. It's fun. It's light. It's your favorite part of the day. Like, this is creating. Now, if people listen and they get value, amazing. If they say they don't like it, can you create anyway? Can you create and just be like, that person's in pain? That is a part of the process. That person's in pain. That person has to judge us because they need to work on themselves, because they probably aren't being creative, and they probably can't do what you're doing, and they probably have envy and jealousy and blame and regret and shame and guilt, and that's on them. That has nothing to do with you. You all are having fun creating.
I went down a rabbit hole because some of the musicians that I like and some of the comics that I like, they died, right? They committed suicide, or they drug addict, died. And I like read about some of these things, and one that there is, I guess, a common enough belief in creator worlds, right? Business of creating as a stand-up comic or as a musician or whatnot, that the reason that I'm good at creating is because I'm broken. Right? The reason that that the pain, to Flaviu's point, that the pain allows me to create this great stuff that my fans like and that made me famous or what have you. And then if I fix myself, then I won't be good anymore, right?
It's true.
It's true. So you believe that?
I do, because I went to a comedy show, and he was really just cutthroat. He wanted to just take whoever was sitting in front of him and rip them to shreds. And everyone found this really funny. And so you do get reinforced for being in pain. Only person in pain makes somebody who's just sitting there at a show that they paid money to be at that show. So just think about what it takes to be a person who got paid by a person sitting in the audience and then rip them to shreds. Like, you are not operating from love, for sure, but there's no money in love for them right now, right? They think all the money's in pain. They're being reinforced, and in pain and fear go together. If I am making you feel crappy and everyone's laughing, and I'm afraid of what it would be like to be nice to you, to show you, like, oh, we're both human, and I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. Where's the money in that? Where's the money in being nice? So I do think that not only do they get into it, but then they get reinforced, and then they get stuck. Ropes come in, because now those golden handcuffs are there, and you just have to keep doing what you're doing. I think entrepreneurs have a lot of pain as well. We're all trying to prove something. Why would we do this? this is crazy. Like a lot of entrepreneurship, that ride it's intense. It will test so much of your mental health. And so when you're in it, why are you doing it? Usually to prove something, usually so people see you. Like, I want you to see me. I want you to know that I could do this. And only I could do this. And so there's nothing like that drive. Like, if you're going to start from the bottom of a hill and get something to go up the hill, that's a beautiful drive. But at what point do you decide that's enough? That you're drinking a lot at home and you're kind of shitty to your partner and like you're not a great parent. All of that is also happening. And then so at some point the seesaw kind of shifts and you start to realize, like, I can't live like this. Or you don't.
Or you don't.
Or you don't. I mean, I don't think my dad's ever going to realize it. So
Right.
like there are plenty of people who will not have, and that's not what their journey is. That's fine.
Guys, we could go on for hours, but I think we should wrap it up. This has been an amazing conversation. Thank you
You're
so
more than
much
welcome.
Mona.
I hope so.
for your vulnerability. Anything else, Taylor?
Yeah, anything you want to promote? What would you like?
Oh my goodness. So I would love support, even if it's kind words for right now, around this gray zones concept, even if it's on Instagram, because I'm trying to do something really powerful and very healing for entrepreneurs. And I've learned my lesson being a UX, CX person. I would love to co-create it. So if you have stories that you think would help entrepreneurs understand that you're not alone, if you have connections, for how this concept of a live experience that brings a small group of people together to really share, I would love your ideas and thoughts. I would really love both support, any kind of support, I will say. That feels good. Yeah.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you, Mona.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you so much, Mona.
Thank you.
Thank you for rocking with the homies. Taylor, Trusty, and Flaviu. Seize the day, own it. Until next time, hold it down, hold it down. Hey.